Okay, if you're just joining and you want right back to the beginning, just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit here. Not sure how long. I'm trying to work out the details with YouTube's situation here and move things around on my deal here. Oh, I gotta adjust the sound. Oh, I gotta adjust. There we go. Don't want the sound playing. I gotta change a couple of things quick. Do a really crummy video, that way I don't slow you down at all. Okay, we'll see how glitchy this thing gets as I walk. I don't know. Doesn't look like it's too glitchy. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. Obviously I'm holding the phone. It's going to be, I don't have a stand set up right now for the phone, and I got to remember to look at that lens right there. But a couple little things quick before we worry about any questions that might pop up here in the near future. So if you have questions, prepare them, type them, whatever. But I got a new camera here. So I'm now going to be using a GoPro. It's a 4K, I can't even see the thing, get some more light on the subject. There we go. So it's a 4K GoPro. It's in a fancy metal case with a microphone and the whole 9 yards. So I'm hoping I can get the audio a little better. I've been struggling with audio a lot lately when it comes to getting my videos to work well with audio. The previous camera I was using was a Yi Light camera. Now I know they're action cameras, but it's what's affordable, so it's what's practical. This one here though, it has really excellent video except for the fisheye effect, which I fixed in the video editing, so don't worry, you won't have to stare at weird fisheye effect. But the microphone is what I'm hoping will be the big benefit. So we'll see what happens with that situation. What's going on in the shop right now while I wait for a few questions? So you can see I got a transmission right here. This is a 4L80E, so an older GM transmission, and this is actually built for a lot of power. But this one's going to be a little bit of a time consumer. I'm not going to do a video on this particular transmission. If you guys are interested in transmission videos, I do them every once in a blue moon. It's not very often. Just let me know. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to actually be doing a transfer case in a, what year is it? 2014, I believe? No, 2012? I don't know. It's a mid-2010-ish to higher 2010 era GM Suburban. So being a Suburban, I'm sure you guys are interested in that. If you are, be sure to leave a comment for me if you want to see a video on that Suburban transfer case, because the transfer case is what I am debating whether I want to do a video on it or not. It's a fairly easy project, but at the same time it does have its little quirks. Alright, so I see a couple questions popped up, so I'll go ahead and start reading. Alright, so I got a guy, so for those of you who might not have seen the video of me doing the lifter release on the most recent video, I use what's called a needle scaler for a mini air hammer. It's a really weak air hammer basically, and I use that to hit the tool with to disengage the locked lifter. And so this guy is asking if a pneumatic palm nailer is okay in place of a needle scaler. And honestly, I don't even know what a pneumatic palm nailer looks like, what it feels like as far as its power goes, but basically you're going for fast, rapid little hits, and it kind of depends on how you're hitting that lifter as to whether it's going to release or not. Sometimes they like to be hit really rapid, short, little mini vibrations, sounds like a hair trimmer going across your head. Other times they like harder thunks, like from a hammer, for instance. So you just got to play around with it and hope that you get just the right frequency that that lifter happens to release. Add a little salt to those bitter grounds. There's a lot of ice around here, a lot of snow and ice. We have tons of snow here in Minnesota that just fell down on us, and it started off the fluffy stuff, right, and turned into an ice glaze on top of that. So it became a little bit interesting, and the roads are a bit ridiculous for those who are traveling in this area. Okay, so we have Jeremy here. I'm going to go ahead and try and set this phone down before I even get into this question. I notice I'm a bit too shaky, and I'm hoping I'm not going to cause it to chop out on you guys. See if I can lean you against something to make this work. How's the audio, by the way? Especially now that I'm a little bit further away, hopefully the audio is okay. All right, so we have a Jeremy here. He's asking about his DOD. He's been driving in third gear. He did the, he must have did the release, I'd imagine, because he's driving in third gear. And it never goes into V4 mode. Have you ever heard of people doing this and it being okay? So the V4 situation, staying in V8 with third gear does work, but I'm just not totally convinced on it. I've never really tried it. I know that it's supposed to work and keep it that way because the system sees no reason to go into four-cylinder mode when the RPMs are picked up like that. But honestly, just get your PCM, even if you have to rent a vehicle, send your PCM off to LT1 Swap if you don't have any local speed shops that can do it. LT1swap.com. He has the most, by far, affordable rate for getting a DOD tune out on your computer done. You just have to wait for the shipping to send it out. Otherwise, if you could find a local speed shop to have it turned off, that'd be great. The range device, I used to kind of hem and haw about whether to do that or not, but I believe it's the wrong choice unless you're still under warranty. So if you ever consider the range device, if you're still under warranty, that's fine. But if you're not under warranty anymore, then go ahead and get a tune no matter what, because that range device could come unplugged. There's a lot of things that could go wrong that could cause it to activate your system again. Thank you. All right, so we have, let's see if I can do this. Buck, I don't even know. Buck something or other. Had trouble with DOD, so I'm going with a Jasper motor. Unlimited miles, your thoughts. Jasper is supposed to be okay. I'm gonna turn off the light quick. I notice you guys got a glare there. Jasper is supposed to be an okay engine rebuild company, but I don't know, I question box rebuilds. And by box rebuilds, I mean where somebody isn't personally involved, a smaller shop. And the reason I do that is because a lot of times they're sent to Mexico or sent some random place. I believe Jasper's in the US, and I think that's why they're probably okay. But if you can get somebody locally to rebuild it and it's not a whole lot extra, it's going to be worth the extra money because they're going to be more determined to do a proper job. However, you do have the warranty with something like a Jasper, which is nice as well. So, I don't know. You pick your poison. A yard motor, I would not be against a yard motor either, as long as the system is turned off right away. That's obviously a good reason. Now, if you can do a Jasper where you get one without displacement on demand and put it in your vehicle, everything else by spec is perfect, go ahead and do that. That would be great. Because then you don't have to worry about the stupid lifters. You just have to turn off the system in your computer and you're set, good to go. But that's something a person would have to talk to Jasper about. Stop with the Keurig. Not sure what you are talking about, sir. Audio is not bad. Good. Audio seemed fine. Yes. DOD is out. Did is out. Yes, did is out. That must be DOD. Must be an auto, correct? Just joined. Thank you for saving me from having to replace my engine due to a stuck DOD lifter. Imagine that. We don't see any of those on this channel at all. DOD delete. What and where do you stick in the drive plate? The drive plate. I'm trying to come up with what you're talking about, sir. So, William, if you can specify what you mean by drive plate, that would be great. If you're talking about that cover, the valley cover, there's a non-DOD valley cover. Now, my video, I should really make a new one. I have a new one in process. I just haven't edited the whole works. But that valley cover should be replaced with a non-DOD valley cover when you're doing a full delete, but only when you're doing a full delete. That's something that's been misunderstood for people, is they're thinking they can do that instead of the VLOM modification, but that ends up causing more problems than it solves, unless you have non-DOD or non-AFM lifters. Okay, so the 5.3 LH9 cam, somebody's asking about putting that in a 6.2. It's from an AMS kit, I guess, and this is Nicholas. So putting a 5.3 cam in a 6.2 I think is a bad idea. The reason that is because the lift and lobe profile on those cams is much weaker than the 6.2. The 6.2 actually has a bit of a hotter cam in it, and the reason is because you're trying to gain more power out of that motor to haul the heavier vehicle that it's in. Typically those are in much heavier vehicles such as Cadillacs or full-size heavy-duty Suburbans, things of that nature, and those are the ones that you're going to want to go ahead and get a proper cam for it. Now, I believe the LS9 has a really close profile to the 6.2 liter, but the 6.2 liter does not have a direct replacement with the same profile without having a tune done. So basically, if you change the cam to a non-DOD cam with a 6.2, you're going to have to get a tune done because the cams that are available don't have the same profile as the DOD cam does. The LS9 is as close as it gets, I believe. Kevin, how do you feel about ARP head studs versus reusing OEM? Ugh. I would never reuse OEM. Now, if you're stock and you're not running high power situation, then running a set of stock head bolts is perfectly fine. Just get the replacement ones. You can even go with Felpro. It doesn't really matter. They're all pretty much just the same, and they're going to work just fine for a stock application. Now, if you're running something really hot and you're making a considerable amount of power, then you definitely want to invest in some ARP studs. Or if you're going to be taking it apart a lot for some reason, like you're a hobby car guy or something that happens to, the rules allow a GM LS based engine, then you're going to want to go and get yourself a set of head studs. That way you can take it on and off without having to replace bolts all the time. Okay, William has a really good question. So, he asked, how do you hold the motor in place when you're torquing the cam or crank bolt? And this was a dilemma for me for a little while as well, because there's no easy way to grab a hold of anything on the engine to hold the crank in place. So what I've done is, if you go down underneath the vehicle, on the transmission bell housing, there is a little cap, and that cap comes off of there. It pops off of there. It's like 3 little tabs that are like this, and those little tabs, when you pop that off of there, it just falls down on the ground, whatever. Go ahead and grab a wrench. So something a bit larger. Now this is a 18 mil. This would probably work. And all I do is, so the torque converter, actually I have one sitting right here. We can just go ahead and show you. This is actually from the 4L80, but that's okay. It'll work for this description. So you have your torque converter bolts right here, right? And then you have this center section of the torque converter. All I'm doing is finding a way to wedge it like that. So it goes against the bolt and against this center section. And once you get it like that, through that hole, then it'll hold the thing in place. So that is a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. I really should cover that on a video at some point. It would be a good topic to put in there. Maybe even make it as a tech tip. Yes, Buck. Smash that like button if you can. Thank you, sir. 10-degree restoration and L99 cam is direct replacement. Okay, so Nicholas is commenting about a less duration and 50 less lift. Otherwise, the L99 is a direct replacement. I believe you were the one who was mentioning the 5.3. Yes. Okay, so running that cam, so you got 50% or 50 thousandths less lift. That is a lot of lift. So that would make a huge difference in how much power the thing's going to make. And then 10 degrees less duration, and that's also huge. So a combination of those two, that's going to make a massive difference in how much power the motor makes. I mean, you're probably, man, you're going to drop easily 50 horse, I bet. So yeah, probably a bad idea, unless you really want to underpower the thing. Although you'd probably be pretty fuel efficient. Maybe, I don't know. TTC finally flogged all the oil out of the intake. 1,000 miles hard trip. I assume you were the one with the PCV valve cover issue that recently commented. Maybe. I'm not totally positive though. I read a lot of comments. Obviously, I reply to as many of them as I can. So there is that. All right. So I see no more comments at the moment. I got something new, and I might as well ask you guys what your opinion of doing such an endeavor is. So I've already got too much on my plate. There is no question about it. I got way too much on my plate. But I always like to add things. I don't know why. I have a problem. Admittedly. So I was thinking about starting a second channel, not a automotive channel, more of a random channel, I guess you could call it. And I'm basically going to cover all kinds of random stuff that I do, and it's just going to be a video every once in a blue moon. So it won't be that much load on me, but I'm debating starting like a just more of a vlog channel for myself. And I'm going to cover things like this guy here. And this is actually a blow dart gun that I've modified and made myself. It's pretty ridiculous for a blow dart gun, but it's a lot of fun. And I'm actually making a blow dart pistol that's piston activated, where you don't have to use your mouth to physically blow the dart. So I'll be covering things like that, other weapons, pew things that I can't put on this channel because I'll get demonetized because of YouTube, just because YouTube. Forgot my camera was on. So, oh yeah, I can't get that thing to work with live streaming. I still have to figure that out. I was trying to do that earlier for this live stream. It wasn't working for me. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. Let's see, we got a couple more things that popped up. Yes, W. What oil sensor filter is needed for the deal? Okay, so the DoD delete valley plate or cover, it's just a cover. There is no filter for the oil pressure sensor. And the reason being is because there's no oil being fed through there anymore. All it is for an oil pressure sensor. So it gets pressurized, goes back down. Gets pressurized, goes back. That's it. It doesn't actually flow oil. That filter is specifically for the VLOM, Valley Lifter Oil Manifold, to protect the lifters from getting debris in them, but it doesn't always work, or it plugs up, obviously. And that's the majority of the DoD AFM lifter failures, is the little screen getting plugged up. All right, Kevin's commenting on the ARP and stock head bolt question that he mentioned earlier about which ones he would, what would be done, and he's stating that he heard that the stock ones can actually be stronger. Yeah, maybe. I don't think the LS ones are stronger. I have personally seen performance cars where they broke the, running 21 pounds of boost on an LS-based engine, but where they broke the stock bolts and then had to go to ARP, and the ARPs held. So personally, I don't think the stock bolts are stronger. I could be wrong, but I highly doubt it, because I've seen a couple cars where they broke the stock bolts because they thought they could get away with that, and it didn't work. Now, something like a 6.4 Ford, what's their Power Stroke? So the Power Stroke motors, they have a head bolt that is just massive. So in that circumstance, I bet you that head bolt would have no reason to go to ARP. I mean, even if a guy was running over 1,000 horse out of that motor, which is an insane amount of torque. I won't even get into the details of diesel stuff. But those things are pretty damn heavy duty. I highly doubt those would break. Make this a little easier. How many of you have seen the new lifter situation I had. I haven't had any suggestions that I thought might be practical for what was causing that weird oil squirting issue. The only thing I could think of is that little check ball has an issue, for those of you who have seen that video. But that was an interesting situation with that set of lifters that failed. I've had 2 vehicles now that had a clicking when warm, and this was the only one that was severe enough to be worth doing something about, which is why the guy spent the energy and time doing something and put money into it, because obviously it was pretty bad. So just reading some, making sure I got everything read here. Broken lifter spring, luckily. Cool. You guys got any kind of personal questions that you might just be curious about or something? Or maybe performance stuff, if you're illiterate in the performance world and want to know something about different performance situations, especially with related to the LS engines. I guess that might be something that, if any of you guys are performance gurus, I don't know. Doesn't look like any of you are on yet. I haven't seen anybody that I know that is in the performance realm. All right, so Kevin C, are those Rock Auto magnets? Yes. So that pile of magnets over there is Rock Auto magnets. The toolbox that you guys are on has a pile of Rock Auto magnets. There's a drawer over there with a stack about this thick of Rock Auto magnets. So yeah, I might buy from Rock Auto, maybe. We got Micah? I assume that's how we pronounce that name. Are you married or have kids? I am married, and I do have kids. I have 2 beautiful little boys, and they're pretty awesome. So I enjoy their company, obviously. I won't show my family on the channel yet. There's no plans to, at least not at the moment. But I do have kids and a wife, so. I am thinking been thinking a lot about updating my shop and my situation because the shop is way too small for me. I am outgrowing the small little garage way too fast. So I will be upgrading at some point. It won't be quite soon, but I am starting to think about different plans and different things of how I'm going to go about doing any kind of upgrading. I've been thinking about how I would lay out the shop and what I would do. I'm definitely looking at moving out into a more of a country house. Currently I live in a small town. I think it's of 10,000 people roughly. Who do you like, Super Bowl, San Francisco, or Kentucky? Or Kansas City? Kansas City. Obviously, I don't pay attention. So, I am not a football guy. I'm not a sports guy in general, really. I don't pay much attention to sports. Even, I'm a performance nut as far as I like to do performance things, but I don't even pay attention to the performance realm of cars as far as what drag racers do and what, or what this person does when they're racing. It's just all in my little world, and I just stick to myself. I don't really get into the entertainment of other people and what they're doing. I'd rather just enjoy the entertainment of what's right in front of me, what I can physically feel, hear, see. That's kind of where I am with that kind of stuff. I don't even get into sports. My local team, the football team, for a while there when I was in school, they did really awesome, and that was cool to know, but I really wasn't into it even, and that's because I didn't actually play. Okay, we got Kevin. Low oil pressure, replaced pump, main bearings, rod bearings, oil pickup O-ring. The only other thing is a barbell looking valve. Where is it located? Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay. I do have an engine block. I'll bring you guys over to it. Okay, so this guy here is my little refrigerator cooler. I actually have cooling system going on in here. I think it's on the other side where we have to find that barbell. Yeah, it's on the other side, I believe. See if I can get you guys a view of that. There it is. Okay. So this is where the block or the oil pan bolts up to. You can see the front of the motor is up there, and this is the transmission side of the motor. And this spot right here, this is where the oil filter area is. So the oil filter sits down in this little bottom section here. And between these two ports, there's our barbell looking thing. And it gets put in through the back side, I believe. I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I believe it gets pushed in from the back side here. And there's a little port down in the bottom, and that port is where that sits, and then the one end of the barbell sits here, the other end sits down here, and that's to separate the oil, because otherwise the hole that goes through here, it would just loop rather than go through the oil filter. I gotta readjust everything. Alright. Just don't be like Goons Squad of Brothers. I don't know who they are yet, I guess. I imagine that's some kind of YouTuber or something, maybe. Thank you, Swaps and Stuff. Stuck again. So. Okay, Sergio Cadena, I imagine that I'm doing that right, maybe? His question is that he bought my tool, and it did work to release the lifter, and he drove around the block and the lifter got stuck again. So the mistake a lot of people are making, and I imagine you probably made the same mistake, so don't feel alone. A lot of people are making this mistake. They forget to get the tune done, or they don't do the VLOM modification. Now, you have to at very least stop it one way or the other, and preferably doing both. Now, the VLOM modification prevents the VLOM from causing the failure as if the VLOM was the actual source of the failure. Now, most of the time, it's just a situation of oil pressure causing the source of the failure, but every once in a while, a VLOM could get a piece of debris caught in it, feeding oil pressure down into the lifter, causing the lifter to collapse. When you don't do the tune, when you don't have the system disabled in a way that can never activate that lifter again, as soon as you have the request to activate that lifter, it's gonna collapse again. It happens every time because the lifter is inside, it's got a wedge point, and as long as you don't activate the system, it'll never hit that wedge point. So everything about the lifter still functions properly. The oiling part of it works great. The little roller still works great. It's just the DOD AFM side of things where the lifter collapses down, that part gets stuck, and it's literally like a wedge. So see how my fingers are like this, and this goes in here and then it gets stuck, and then it can't pop back out again like it's supposed to until you come in there with the tool and you hit it, then it vibrates it and it pops it free. That looked kind of bad now that I look at that, but anyway, I digress. Alright, let's see here. Kevin, we got... No, I have not seen that barbell fail often at all. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one fail. So if you're having an oil pressure issue, you're going to have to find the source somehow, some way. Now, I've heard of cam bearings causing oil pressure issues, but the most common sources are that little O-ring on the oil sump where the pickup tube goes into the pump. The sump can get plugged up, but that's not horribly common. And then of course the valve train up top, if it's losing a lot because of crazy tolerances along with main and rod bearing tolerances getting loose, then obviously you're going to have a problem. What is your oil pressure actually at? How low is it getting, say, hot idle? What is your pressure getting down to? Okay, so a P0420, is that a CAT efficiency or is that an evap code? For some reason, I'm thinking that's a CAT efficiency. So Mark, get back to me on that. Let me know what that code is, because I'm not going to look it up at the moment. And can lifter still collapse? Okay, so Daniel says, have a programmer hooked up and disabled the AFM. Hopefully it's a true programmer that actually programmed the AFM out and it's truly disabled. If you have a range device, that's another story. But the lifter can still collapse. For instance, if the valley lifter oil manifold, that blom, that valley cover thing, if there's a piece of debris caught somewhere and it's allowing oil to flow into the lifter tower, that oil tower, it'll actually build pressure and collapse the lifter. And it'll stay collapsed because it won't have enough pressure to activate it quick enough to disengage the locks fast enough, so they'll bind and cause a effect that collapses it. Otherwise, you could also have it the other direction. So oil pressure gets fed from the bottom of the lifters as well, and it bleeds around and goes into that oil tower. Now the valley lifter oil manifold is supposed to bleed that pressure off, but if that gets plugged up and it can't bleed that pressure off anymore, then guess what's going to happen? That tower is going to build up with pressure, and again, you're going to collapse the lifter. So that's why my VLOM mod is so important for these motors, is because they can still fail unless that mod is done. Then they can't fail, hypothetically speaking, but of course, I mean, things wear out. I guess they are kind of moving back and forth. I say 99% chance it won't fail with the VLOM mod done, at least 99 or better. So otherwise, there is still a pretty reasonable chance of it failing. One swap. Alright, so Jeremy Johnson, I'm going to send my PCM to LT1 swap. He's wondering if there's anything special he has to do before he sends it off to him. And he mentioned the battery. Now, it would be a good idea to disconnect the battery. It doesn't seem as though it's necessary. I've disconnected them. You're supposed to. Put it that way. You're supposed to disconnect the battery. I've disconnected a lot of them without disconnecting the battery, and I haven't had a problem yet. But I probably should be disconnecting the battery. So I recommend you disconnect the battery. Don't do like me. Practice what I preach, not what I do. So yeah, disconnect the battery, but also listen to LT1 Swap's instructions. I believe he doesn't really mention about putting anything in the box as far as an invoice. He just says write AFM on the box, but I always put a copy of my receipt in the box with him. I don't know if it helps him or not. I haven't personally asked him, but that's just what I do. I don't know. So maybe do the same thing. It doesn't hurt to add a little piece of paper so he's more reassured as to who it's coming from. Kevin C. 18 PSI cat code. Okay, so that is a converter code. With a converter code, you can cause further damage, sort of. I mean, it depends on the situation. It depends on why the converter is throwing the code. I actually have a converter code on my personal truck. I just have an old 98 beater Chevy truck. But it doesn't seem like it's restrictive, as in, I'm not losing power or anything, so I'm just letting it ride for now until I can get time to pull it in the garage and work on it. I just have not had any time whatsoever to do so. But feel the truck. If you feel like it's underpowered, you're definitely restricted, and you're going to want to do something about it as soon as possible. And there's there's backwards ways of bypassing the cat. I didn't say that, but there are ways to get around that. But if you can afford it, get a new cat and put it in. Just don't go with a dirt cheap converter. 18 psi, I don't know. Oh, that's the oil pressure, that's right. Oh, 18 psi, that is pretty darn low. You're not going to have an engine failure because of that pressure, but that is really low. Make sure your oil pressure sensor is good first off. If you can, hook a mechanical gauge to it, do that. Otherwise, search my channel. I have a oil pressure video. Make sure you check all the things that I've done on that video as well. If you've already done those things, then I don't know, you're going to have to find the loss somewhere. I don't know what all you've done to the vehicle to work on this oil pressure issue yet, I know you mentioned it up above, perhaps shoot me a message via my website, crazedperformancerepair.com, and that'd be a better way for us to communicate this situation. It sounds like one that might be a little more involved than worth trying to, when my mind is already going at all these different questions. So. Okay, Daniel Starks. He says if the rocker is not loose, then it's not collapsed, right? And he's asking that, obviously. It can still be collapsed. It's not stuck collapsed is a scenario. So if the rocker's not loose and you're still losing a cylinder, at very least jump the starter relay and watch what the rocker is doing. Watch it from right when you start to jump it till you know that you got to have oil pressure by now, kind of a thing. You know, 5. Oop, looks like I lost connection. Hopefully that. Oh, well, that was easy. It's almost like I lost nothing. I was watching that screen. That's weird. Anyway, so jump the starter 5-10 seconds at least, and pay attention to what the rockers are doing. If one of the rockers is doing its normal rock thing and then all of a sudden it stops rocking, then you have oil pressure pressurizing that lifter, disengaging the locks, and thus it's telling the rocker not to move anymore. It's letting the lifter just absorb everything. In that case, usually it's a spun lifter that's spun 180 degrees, and I've got lots of videos covering that. But basically, they spin around, they line up with the other oil port, and then they just disengage the locks. All right, so the intake torque is what I'm being asked by Ryan for doing this job. The torque spec on the intake is technically going to be 89 inch-pounds. All I do is I go until the, so you know how those bolts have that little shouldered sleeve thing? I go until it contacts that sleeve, and then I just give it a little bit after that, because that's all 89 inch-pounds does. Go ahead and do it a couple times on a couple bolts, and once you feel what it's doing, you'll know that's exactly what it is. It's the same for the valve cover bolts too. After you've done it enough, you'll realize that it's just a little bit past contact point, and you'll realize how much as well. All right, so Dustin is asking, he spoke with me last week, I guess. I speak with a lot of people, so I'm not going to recall that exact conversation unless there's something specific that stands out. But he did the Vlam mod and got it to release, and he wants to keep it running for now. He's wondering if he can just keep it in third gear to do so. Maybe. I'm not going to confirm it, but you probably could do either third gear or just make sure you stay out of the AFM positions. So it will activate no matter what when you're coming to a stop sign, and it'll be on the down decel off the throttle or barely touching the throttle, and it'll just do a quick activate. With the Vlam mod done, all it does is it triggers the lights and then shuts them off. Now I don't know if it's gonna, in the long run, trigger a code and then maybe put it in limp mode. I had one guy that claimed that's what was happening, but only one guy, so I don't know if that's truly what's going to happen or not, but otherwise you could just keep it in third. I've also heard rumor of the vehicles that do have the little pressure vacuum sensor that's right on the brake booster, of unplugging that, and it stops it from entering the 4-cylinder mode, but I'm not totally positive of that either. Okay, so he's worried about the injectors dropping out and the valve still opening. If that does happen, it'll obviously run like crap. It won't damage anything, but it will run like complete crap. It'll shake really bad. So when the AFM DoD system's actually activated, those cylinders that the valves disengage in, obviously the valves stay shut. So because the valves are staying shut, that cylinder now, that piston in there, just becomes a big spring basically. And since 4 of these springs are activated at the same time, it's just a bunch of springs. So the motor can actually run smooth. Now, if you have valves opening up still, it's going to allow air in, allow air to compress, and then push air out. Every time it compresses, it's going to create a shake. And that shake is what's going to make it feel like it runs like complete. But it doesn't do any damage officially. Okay, so the Vlam modification, I actually have a Vlam I can grab quick. We have William Hill asking. He's asking what the Vlam modification is. And if you go to my big long 37-minute video, it's right at 27:17 is when I start talking about the Vlam modification. But here is the Vlam, or VLAM, or whatever you want to call it. But basically, I cut these little gaskets out of there, all of them except for the oil pressure sensor one, of course. And I got to keep this perimeter gasket in place. Then I have a little Vlam plug, which looks kind of like this. This is just a piece of aluminum pipe, but that goes inside here, and it seals off the port that feeds these lifters. And by doing that, you eliminate the possibility of the Vlam being activated either by the computer or accidentally by being plugged up or jacked up from some kind of debris getting caught in it. Mark, yes, it's a cat code. Only fine. Okay, so Daniel Starks is commenting about the spun lifter situation again. When that happens, the only thing you can do is replace the lifter and the guide. I'll go grab a guide real quick. Feel free to shoot me a message on my website about this situation. Make sure you state more than who you are, because I won't remember who you are. I'll be honest. So if you want to link to where to find these, I can certainly link them. But you need new plastic guides as well as lifters, and then you are going to have to replace the cam. Now, it's up to you whether you want to go with a non-DOD cam and do a full delete or not. But I'd say 99% of the time the cams are damaged from a spun lifter. And it's because when that lifter spins, the roller is turning sideways against the lifter. I don't have a roller right there. I'm not going to run to the back again. Not yet. So the roller is running sideways across the cam, and it ends up creating a nasty mark in the cam. And if it does spin the rest of the way around, now the roller is the correct direction, but the damage has already been done to both the roller and the cam. So you will need it, but you can do a full delete or a stock replacement cam. Either way, you're best off doing the full delete. And if that's the case, then these guides get replaced. If you could see this one, it's just straight on these two. And then when I go over here, it's got this weird double notch here, and then this one's got a straight, kind of shorter straight here. So it'll be this on all four of them. So all the way across, it'll look like this guy here. And that's for the full delete system. And of course, you'll have to get a new valve cover and then get a tune done. And it's a process, but it's worth the money because these motors go a ton of miles as long as they don't have this stupid AFM system on them. All right, thank you, Sergio. You go ahead and get it ordered, and I'll get it shipped out tomorrow morning. Okay, so I have Jim asking if there's a DoD delete or a DoD kit. So I imagine you mean DoD delete kit for the 5.3 that you would recommend buying, and a kit not to buy. Okay, so the kit to buy, if you can make sure that you get all the right parts and you're comfortable with what you're going to actually need, I would go through Texas Speed. The reason I would go through them is because I like the way that they have the cams listed when you put your vehicle in there, and you make sure that you get a cam that has the same lift duration and so forth, and you won't be confused or screwed up. So that's the only people that I use. as far as being a quick and easy route. Otherwise, the hardest thing to do is piece them together, all of the pieces. I mean, everything. And I've done that too before, where I use BTR, because Brian Tooley, Racing Cams, he has custom camshaft grinds that are really good, and I'll do that if somebody wants to step up their truck a little bit as far as their performance their truck makes, or fuel economy, or whatever. So I'll go to them if I want to really get picky with the parts. Otherwise, ones to avoid, I guess, try and stay away from the really cheap kits. If you see something that's under 400, avoid it for sure, because that's just way too cheap. If you can find one between 4 to 6, that's pretty practical. Anything above that, it's probably coming with a tuner or something and might not be necessary. So I don't know, that's kind of a... I basically just go through Texas Speed. I haven't heard any bad news about anybody specifically, but that's kind of who I go through because I know the parts and I know how to get it. Now, I know Amazon offers some kits as well, and I've heard some people using them, but I've never heard anybody complain about them. So maybe check the reviews and go based off of that. Okay, I got William asking, with a full delete kit, will the car run if the AFM has not been turned off? With a full delete kit, you won't have the valley plate, this VLOM. You'll have a flat plate with just a couple of gaskets on it. And because of that, you're not going to have this connector. You're not going to have this connector connected that goes to these solenoids. And without a tune done and that disconnected, the vehicle is going to see that, instantly throw a circuit code at you, and what it does is it puts the vehicle in limp home mode. And by that, it means it won't let you operate the throttle. So you'll hit the throttle, and even if you pin it, it might just go up a little bit, real slow and gradual. And it's the form of limp home mode to keep from damaging anything. I don't know why they use the limp home mode for something like that, so what if that doesn't work? The engine's going to run fine. I don't know. Just the way GM is, but they do that, and that's the way it is. Nothing we can really do about that, I guess. All right, good deal. Sounds like we are wrapping up with the questions. Oh, I got one more here. Okay, we got Dustin asking about the range device versus the tune. Now, if you go a little bit earlier in my video, I actually commented on that. But basically, no on the range device, yes on the tune is the short end of the story. Range device is only good for if you're still under warranty, and that's the only time I would really use it at this point. All right, so anything else I got to cover quick? I don't think so. I think I'm pretty well caught up. Do you guys enjoy the performance videos much? And would you be interested in seeing my future video coming up since you stayed this long? I have a video that is going to be releasing in the next few weeks. Maybe sooner. I don't know. 1 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure how soon it's going to release. But this is a surprise. Ford's brake 2. And you're not going to believe the way this one broke. Well, if the guy is on here that's seen it, he came in here, he'll know. But I'll give you a little sneak peek here. Let's just put it this way. What do you make of that? That, my followers, is from a 3.5 EcoBoost from 2017. So, a 2017 F-150 broke a crankshaft literally in half. Well, only a quarter of it. Only one rod, but it broke it, which is pretty crazy. So if you guys are looking forward to that video, make sure you click on that and watch that. It is a tutorial style video like most of my videos. So the first video will be basically explaining a few things and going over some of the teardown. The second video is going to be a lot of tutorial stuff, but I think at the end of it is where I pull the crank, I believe. And then the third video is more putting back together again. So just a little heads up. Since you stayed, you'll get a little pre-glimpse of that. Alright, Jeremy. Does a tuner like Diablo Pred 2, I imagine that's Predator? I think that's how they label them. do anything performance-wise. Basically, is it worth it? Since I need to tune the DoD out anyways, will it really help with performance? Okay, so when it comes to the aftermarket tuners, they usually offer some kind of a box tune. Now, typically the box tunes that come with... Hold on. Whew. That was random. Typically the box tunes that come with the aftermarket performance tuners like Diablo Sports and so on, they're kind of gas hogs. I've heard a lot of people complain that their fuel economy just went down the tank. And what that tells me is it's not a very good tune, and it's running a bit on the rich side. Leaner is meaner. So with a stock car, you can actually run a very lean tune on a stock motor, and it won't get too hot. But the tuning companies are trying to protect themselves from getting sued. So they'll advance the timing where needed to gain a little bit of power, but it's not going to be a lot. And then they'll run it rich to be safe. So if you can get an actual proper tune done from a proper tuner with a dyno, or even somebody who street tunes, they're probably going to do a much better job than that unit, unless they're willing to do data logs and continue advising your tuner or remapping your tune to make your tune specific for your vehicle versus a general box tune. If you can do that, then you'll actually be onto something, and you'll probably gain a little bit. Battery will run out soon. Oh, I suppose my battery probably needs to be charged, huh? So you finish up these last couple questions, and then I'll let you guys go, but I'm going to get plugged in here. And I know nobody else is going to stay that long, so I'm not going to worry about what's in the background here. Just hush yourselves about that little guy over there. Oh, not working. This is not working. Chargers, love it. Well, actually, it's more a problem of it up on its own. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Sorry about this. Just give me a minute here. Oh, of course, that gets blocked. Technical difficulties. This transmission does not work. Oh, and I'm dropping you guys. Put on my phone and everything. Screw it. You're going on the floor. Maybe. What did I do? Oh, I switched the camera. Boy, all kinds of technical difficulties. There we go. All right, never mind that thing in the background there. Oh, gotta aim you up a little bit. There we go, whatever. Okay, last couple questions, and then we're gonna get going. You have to keep them coming over. Still run. If it's just the lifter that has spun and not the cam, will it still run? Well, the cam always spins. But the lifter, when that spins, yes, it'll still run. It might not run on one cylinder, because if it rotates enough, it'll get the oil fed from underneath, and that's what causes them to then activate the DoD or AFM part of that lifter, and it lets it collapse and absorb all the movement from the cam, and then of course it chews the cam apart too. Alright, so George, he got the Vlam kit because he had a stuck lifter, low oil pressure. It worked, thanks. Out of curiosity, did you have a bunch of bolts loose? I bet you did. It seems like I keep getting more and more people that keep telling me, hey man, I had a ton of Vlam bolts loose. You were spot on with that. So, and I've done 3 in the last 3 weeks? Yeah, about 1 a week lately. And all 3 of them had loose Vlam bolts. There was one that almost didn't have loose Vlam bolts. It only had 3 that were loose, but the other 2 had almost all of them, except for the last couple in the back. So, okay, we have the Daniel again. He's asking if he just replaced, I think he meant lifter, that has spun. Well, it's still run without having to replace the cam. It depends on how bad the lobe is. It might chew the lobe completely off, or it might leave a lot of the lobe left and run fine. The problem is it's going to transfer the damage from the cam to the new lifter roller, and then that will just continue to eat itself alive because they both spin at a different speed. The roller spins faster than the cam does, so it's constantly going to sit there and chew up the cam as it's rotating until the point of where the two of them are unusable again. If you're willing to deal with the bad karma and you want to sell it, go for it. That's up to you. But I'm not going to recommend you don't replace the cam if the cam is damaged. Jeremy George, still low oil pressure. Any suggestions? I've changed the O-ring. Yes. Bolts loose. Still low pressure. Also have not tuned ECU yet. Okay. Have you... I'm trying to think. You have changed the filter, correct? And then make sure that you might want to cut the filter open just to be sure, you know, that whatever filter's been in there a while, just to be sure there's no metal shavings in there. Make sure you don't have any severe things going on. Otherwise, my most recent video where I showed that new lifter issue, that could cause low oil pressure. And I actually believe my oil pressure video that I showed that the pressure was doing this was actually due to a lifter squirting the oil out. I just didn't know about it at the time when I was doing that video. And so I assume that that fluttering is from a bad lifter now that I look back at that video. But you know, you could have a couple of lifters that are just squirting oil like crazy out of them. Now these motors normally, when they're lubing the rocker by pushing oil through the lifter, they normally only let a real small amount at idle. I've seen some of them where they barely let anything at all. Usually those end up galling the tip of the push rod, but I've seen them where you have to rev them up before they actually have oil come out of them. And so these motors are designed specifically not to have much oil going up into the valve train. I don't know if that's because the springs don't really get that hot, but that's also how the springs cool, is through the oil going across the springs. A lot of people don't realize that. The oil going across the springs is what cools them down, because springs do create heat as they go up and down. Just like if you were to take a piece of metal, bend it back and forth until it breaks, right where the break is, it'll be hot. And that's because it's flexing, just like a spring does constantly. All right, Dustin Parker, you must have joined after a couple of comments, but you can go to lt1swap.com if you're willing to ship it out. He's the most affordable guy there is to get a tune done by far, hands down. It's only $50 plus whatever the shipping is to get it to him. He ships it back free of cost. So use him if you can. Otherwise, if you don't have the ability to wait and you're willing to pay like a tuner to do it, find a local speed shop. They're the guys who are going to be able to do that for you. The speed shops are probably going to charge between $150 and $250, maybe $300 tops. If they go above that, just argue with them and say, hey, look, I'm just having the AFM turned off. That's all I want you to do. That's it. I'm not having you do anything custom. You know, but all right. Other than that, I think we're going to call it quits on this video. I've been streaming long enough, so thanks for joining me. And as always, hope to see you on the next video. And I want to see you guys on that Ford video. I want to see your comments, because you got to make fun of Ford for it too, right? Not GM is the only one that fails. So stick around and we'll get some more videos out. I got a couple cool GM ones that are coming. So I got one more question though that I am going to answer quick, just because it's an easy one. Can you tighten Vlam bolts without pulling it apart? You can tighten the Vlam bolts in the front without pulling the intake off, but the intake does have to come off to tighten the rest of them. There's a couple foam pieces of insulation not only in the way, but to weasel a wrench that far down would be very, very tough. You can maybe build a custom wrench and do it, but it would be really tough. So, alright guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Nope.